Welcome to another episode of Fully Baked. This month, dessert pizza. It is a super versatile, super tasty, and fun dessert. So what that means today is we're actually going to make a cookie dough and a frosting. So it's a little bit of two recipes. You'll find two recipes listed below for this. And we're gonna go ahead and get started making our cookie, or going over our recipe for our cookie. This is a great recipe to do with kids, especially if you have smaller kids over for the holidays, if you're having a kid party where you need something for them to do, like Boy Scout, Girl Scout. This is great for that. As well as you can convert this to a healthy recipe, you can convert this to a dog-friendly recipe. So like I said, it's not only tasty, it's not only fun, but it is extremely versatile and not hard at all. So we're gonna start with our cookie. We're gonna make a Snickerdoodle, just because I prefer it for my dessert pizza. But another good one would be a sugar cookie or a chocolate chip cookie. I wouldn't recommend too many others. You want a good, solid, stay together, not crumbly, not too soft cookie. The only other exception is if you're going to go onto the healthier end, you may want to do an oatmeal-based cookie, but you could just do a lower sugar type of Snickerdoodle if you wanted. So what we need for this recipe is going to be 1.5 cups of sugar. So let's start with that. And we're going to do this like we always do. I'm going to use just the 1/2 cup for it because I can just do it 3 times. It makes it a little bit easier. Now, if you live in a humid area and you get humidity clumps in your sugar, you can see how I'm just pushing it down. You just break up your little clumps. It doesn't hurt your sugar at all. You just have to make sure you dissolve it well. That's 1/2. That's 1. And then that is 1.5. Now, having already read through the recipe, I know I need a little bit of additional sugar for the cinnamon sugar topping. So I already have a bowl out for that. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab that sugar while I'm doing this, because that way I can put the sugar up. So we know we need 3 additional tablespoons of sugar. So 1, 2, 3, and we'll set that back over there. Now we can set the sugar completely out of our way. Okay, now I've put the sugar into our mixing bowl because we're gonna do the creaming method, which means we cream the butter and sugar before we add anything else. So I'm gonna set that aside. And now I'm gonna take and add my other dry ingredients and sift them into the secondary bowl. So the other things we're gonna need is our cup of butter, which I put somewhere over here. So easy to forget what you're doing. Here's my butter. I'm gonna get us a butter knife so we can chunk it up when we put it in. It's not necessary, but if you're using a hand mixer, even a stand mixer, but primarily a hand mixer, it makes it easier for it to mix up completely. We'll need 2 eggs, which I have warming over here. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put those over here with us. And then next on our list is 2 3/4 cup of flour. So let's get that sifted in. All right, so that is 1 cup of flour. Like I said, we're doing this like always, making sure we don't pack it in and we just level it off. 2 cups of flour. And then we're gonna need 3/4, so we're gonna get 1/2. And then 3/4. All right. Let's set this flour out of the way. Now let's just sift that in. Dumping any little pieces that stick. And then we're going to add the rest of the dry ingredients. So then we need 2 teaspoons cream of tartar. If you don't have this, it's fairly sometimes difficult to find in the supermarket. On the baking aisle, it's usually over where the spices are. I always end up having to ask one of the people there to help me find it, but that's just me. I'd be wandering for a week looking for something this small. All right. It's a very small opening, so I'm going to do this 1/4 at a time. Make sure you shake it so that it's level. That's 1. 2, 3. I usually like to get the little containers that have the much wider opening for the mouth, but I ran out of cream of tartar right in the heart of the pandemic, and I had to take whatever I could get. So I had to actually order it from Amazon, and they only had the smaller neck jars. So like I said, I got what I got, and I made do. A teaspoon of baking powder. Again, you always want to try and get the aluminum-free baking powder. And here we go. All right. Then we need a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And you can use your white salt. I like to use my pink Himalayan salt. I think it has a little bit of a different flavor that I like, but you can use your regular white salt or really any particular salt that you prefer. Just remember, if you're doing something like a Himalayan salt or a sea salt, you're just gonna have granules, so you're just gonna dump it in, because if you try to sift it, the granules of the larger salt will get stuck. All right, and the last thing to go in here is going to be our cinnamon. And then like with our sugar, we're going to need additional cinnamon for this, so we'll get that mixed as well as soon as we're done with this part. So we need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. One and 2. And then we need 3 additional teaspoons for your cinnamon sugar. Now, because I'm mixing this in with the sugar, I'm not as careful with how I measured. I don't mind a little extra cinnamon in there, so I'm not even going to be concerned. Then I'm going to take this spoon, because we've got our sugar and our cinnamon, and I'm going to mix this. Now, I always keep whatever's left over. You can use it for further Snickerdoodles, because if we were doing small ones, we would make small balls and roll them in this. I also use them to make cinnamon sugar toast or cinnamon sugar waffles, pancakes, whatever I'm looking for at the time, or whatever I'm making at the time. Now we're going to take our dry ingredients, finish sifting them out. Then we're going to take our spatula and make sure we mix them together really well. As we've said before, if you mix them together really well in the bowl, they'll incorporate more evenly when you make your cookie dough. And you'll be able to see the cinnamon throughout the flour. If you really like a good strong cinnamon flavor, you can go ahead and add a little more cinnamon to this recipe inside your dough, but not too much. For every little bit of cinnamon you add, it's a dried spice. And anytime you add a dry spice, it sucks up some of your moisture. So just be aware of that. All right. Okay, I am back. I just wanted to make a check. I thought I might have forgotten something from the recipe, but I did not. Okay, so now we're going to take our dry ingredients and set them aside. And we're going to check our recipe, as like I said, we always want to do before we start going. And we want to preheat to 375. Oops. All right. So, we're going to go ahead and cream our butter and sugar. Let's get our butter in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my normal stick of butter and I'm going to cut them on the tablespoons just to make it easier work for my hand mixer to incorporate it and get our sugar nice and fluffy. So I just go through and chop it about the tablespoon. You pick it up and we turn it out. We're going to do the same thing on this side. And that is our cup of butter. That aside, I'm going to get me a paper towel, wipe off my hands, and now we're going to go ahead and cream our butter and sugar. Generally you want about 3 to 4 minutes. You want a nice light fluffy look, just like we did when we did the cake or the chocolate chip cookies. So you want to get it just started fairly slowly so you don't wear all the sugar all over you. And then speed it up. Now the colder your butter still is, the longer it takes to get a good fluff. That's why you want to try and remember to get your butter out the night before, or make sure you use the microwave trick to warm it but not melt it. Here we go. I'm going to use this spatula just to scrape down the side. We're getting closer. Show you guys where we are and where we want to be, because we're about maybe half to 3/4 of the way. You can see you can still see some of the sugar. You can see the butter starting to get fluffy, but it's not quite there. So we're just going to keep scraping the sides and keep it going so it gets nice and fluffy. To get your hand mixer moving around the entire bowl so you're not only mixing one spot. With your stand mixers, it'll move for you. But if you're doing it with a hand mixer, make sure you keep moving around the bowl. like a long step, and it does take some time, but it does make your cakes and your cookies get a much better consistency if you get your butter good and mixed and fluffy. It'll keep you from getting those granules of sugar in your cake that are unmixed. It'll help keep your cookies from collapsing. Now here, let me show you what we've got. See how we have a nice, fluffy, much lighter color. All right, on to our next lovely step. So now that we have creamed the butter and sugar, we're gonna add in both our eggs and our vanilla. So I'm gonna do the vanilla first just so I can put it all up out of the way. Teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half. I usually go about a half a tablespoon because I like it extra vanilla. Original Snickerdoodle recipes don't have vanilla in them. I think it needs it, but if you don't, you can leave it out. We're gonna do our eggs, and as usual, we're gonna crack them one at a time. Make sure nothing is wrong with our egg, and then we're going to mix it in. And as soon as that's mixed in, we'll get the next egg in. Let me scrape down my sides and we'll add in the second egg. Once again, making sure there's nothing wrong with the egg, which is why we put it into a separate and not directly in. Plus, we don't want any shells in our cookie or cake batters. So let's get this second egg mixed all the way in. All right, we've got our eggs mixed in, we've got our vanilla mixed in. Now it's time to go ahead and add our dry ingredients. I'm going to do half and half because I don't want to wear all of my cinnamon over me with you. All right, let's get this sugar. We're just gonna get this mixed, barely. And then we're gonna give it a quick push down with this and add the rest of our dry ingredients. I'm gonna put all this out of the way. My hands again, and we're going to go ahead and mix our cookie dough just until it is mixed. To clean these off as best I can. And this, my friends, is why, after letting the dog out and before coming back to you guys, I wash my hands because I had to open the kitchen door. And I wouldn't want to touch the cookie dough after touching something that's not sanitary, even though we're going to cook it. And then we're going to make it, we're going to take it and we're going to stir it the rest of the way just because we've got a lot of that flour stuck at the bottom. And even if you're doing this in a hand mixer, you are most likely going to have to finish your stir afterwards. You'll find all that flour at the bottom because it is a very thick dough that you roll into individual little balls if we were doing individual snickerdoodles. So we do need to get all that last bit of flour incorporated. It'll give you a little bit of a workout stirring. this to temp. This is as mixed as we're going to get it with a spatula right now. Now I may add a little flour to this as we go because we're going to be rolling it out. But for right now, what we're going to do is make a ball of this. Normally we would do these in little. This does need just a drop more flour. Okay. We're going to add a little flour because if for one, like today, it is very humid here, the dough is staying a little wetter, I'm going to add a little flour because this should form a ball for me. So what you want to do if it's not forming a ball is just add a little flour because the humidity plays heck with your baked goods. And we are very sticky today. And because I'm making this into a pizza and not a regular Snickerdoodle, I do want a stiffer dough. So I've added, I would say, about a 1/4 cup extra right there. And that should do you if your dough is still a little wet and sticky. So what you want, so that you can see what I mean because we're adjusting this dough, is you want it to be, it's still going to be a little sticky, but you see how it's holding its form when I roll it towards the ball? If it won't hold its form, add a little flour. So now that we've made this into essentially a giant ball, we're going to take the giant ball of dough, making sure we scrape out what's left in here, and we're going to plop it in our cinnamon sugar. So now that it's in our cinnamon sugar bowl, we are literally going to roll it around in there until all the outside is fully coated in cinnamon sugar. And I am pressing it down and up because I really want to get that cinnamon sugar coated in here. Okay, let me wash my hands again because I'm now covered in both dough and cinnamon sugar. Now we're going to get to the fun part. Rolling this dough out, and this dough is normally not rolled out, it's usually pressed. So there are many different ways we can do this. So let's get our area straightened so we can work. Let's get rid of this. All right. Now, you can take a mat such as this one that is to roll out. It gives you the different circle diameters, measurements on it. I left a link for this below. I'm not going to use it for this. If you have an actual pizza pan, you can just press the dough down into the pizza pan. If you want, you can use the edge of a pan, any cake pan, any size cake pan, to basically use as a cookie cutter and cut around it. You can just make a square. You could make just large cookies. You could do this literally however you want to make your pizza look. I'm going to roll out right on my parchment paper because I just want to lift it in to my pan without having to figure out how to pick up such a large cookie. So I'm going to take about half this dough, I think. So when I cut it in half, I'm going to make sure I roll the cut side into that cinnamon sugar so that everything is coated nicely. Now I'm just going to press this down and roll. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can cut the sides out, or you can just make it a random odd-shaped circle as if you made real pizza dough. I know when I make my pizza dough at home, I never quite get a perfect circle. If I'm sticking a little to my thing, my rolling pin, I'm actually going to sprinkle the cinnamon sugar on it so I don't add the flour because it's not necessary at this point. So when you get a thickness you want it decently thick, but not super thick because you don't want it not to cook either. When you get a nice thickness, and in this case I am going to take off the bottom of my springform pan and press down, pull up my extra. So that I have a decent sized circle. So what you're left with is your circle on your parchment. Grab your pan, flop it right on there. You don't have to worry about trying to move that big circle. And you're ready to go into the oven. Now our recipe calls well, you know what? I don't actually remember how long this is supposed to go in for. I want to say 10 minutes, but because it's a big cookie, it'll take a little bit longer. So let me grab my recipe book and then I'll wash my hands again, because I honestly did not write down on my recipe card how long this is supposed to go in for. And this is what happens. Sometimes you forget the simplest things. All right, 10 minutes, I was correct. So we're gonna put it in for 10 and then we're gonna check it, because we wanna make sure that it's done since it's a larger cookie. You let the other dog out and then I will wash my hands and we will roll out our next one. All right, sorry about that. It's getting a little cooler here in Texas and they prefer the outdoors. But refuse to just stay out there when you ask them to. So now I need a better paper towel. So we've got our first cookie baking. So while that's in there, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do our second one. I think that's the good, to me, that's the size of the pizzas I like them, but that's just me. So I'm gonna make sure my next dough ball, again, is fully cinnamoned. I'm gonna plop it in the middle, throw a little cinnamon sugar on my rolling pin, and I'm gonna start by pan pressing it down because then you have to roll a lot less. So I'm gonna hand press it a little and then roll it to the thickness that I want it. I'm gonna put the bowl on the end to help keep my paper from moving while I do this. Now remember we said before when rolling, we want to go in different directions so that we can get an even rollout in our thickness. So I've got about the thickness I want for this. I'm going to go ahead and cut out a second pizza. And again, just toss my leftover dough right on into the cinnamon sugar bowl. And voila, lovely, pretty pizza. Grab our second pizza. And we're just gonna set that aside while we work on this last one. So we're gonna just take our leftover dough, which should be enough to make a third pizza of this size. And I will, as soon as I'm done touching the food, I will measure this springform pan so I can tell you. I think it's a 9-inch pan, but I'm not positive I'm remembering that correctly. Right, let's see if that's big enough. It's not. I didn't think so. So let's get it. Oops. A little more width. All right, we get a little more cinnamon sugar on there. should bring me out far enough to get a cut. Again, I'll take off the excess. But this time, instead of a pizza, we're just gonna make a couple of little, or a large snickerdoodle. All right, we have just a little bit of dough left. So I'm gonna break that up into a few little actual snickerdoodles. So I'm gonna take that last bit of dough, I'm gonna break them up into like meatball sized balls, add them to the corner of the parchment paper, and that way we don't waste any of the dough. We have a nice little cookies, just regular sized cookies made out of the leftover dough. All right. Let me wash my hands real quick yet again. All right, my paper towel. All right, let's measure this real quick so I can give you an idea about the size of this pizza. All right. Is my 9-inch pan. So that's a 9-inch pizza. And I think that works the best. If you can see the size here. I think this one works the best, just it's not too large to work with. It's not so small that you can't really decorate it nicely. And the decorations, both the cookie and the decorations, can be used for creativity. You get the dirty stuff out of the way here. We're going to take our leftover cinnamon sugar, plop it in with this one. And this is my personal cinnamon sugar. As you saw, I made new for this bake. This is just stuff I use for stuff for my house, but that way we don't waste any of the cinnamon or the sugar. All right, now let's wipe up our counter. Let me get the vinegar. Remember, we're using vinegar and water, which is food safe, animal safe, and sterilizing. Let's wipe it up so that I can bring out the decorations and we can talk a bit about the versatility of this. Like I said, you can make it a chocolate chip cookie. Sugar cookies work really easily because they are a roll-out cookie. Shortbread I find too delicate for this. I like the Snickerdoodle, I just prefer it with the candy. So we're gonna do candy toppings. If you want to change this up and make it healthy, you could either do, like I said, a low sugar oatmeal cookie, or you can use a sugar substitute in the Snickerdoodle and make a low sugar Snickerdoodle. If you wanted to make a little doggy cake for your dog's birthday, for Christmas, Thanksgiving, you can go back to video, I want to say it's number 2, where I did the homemade dog biscuit. And you can use the dog biscuit recipe for your pizza. Instead of the frosting we're going to make, you would take peanut butter and low fat, low sugar Greek yogurt and make a whip for your topping. Then you would take dog-friendly fruits and vegetables, and right before you serve it, you would add it to the top. Dogs will love it. If you're doing healthy, or you want to do half and half, sort of the cookie and the frosting with healthy, then you want to use fresh fruits. It tastes amazing, but you want to make sure you only put the fruit on right before eating, or you're going to end up with watery frosting and soggy cookie, and that's just yucky. So, I like a candy topping. This is something I do very rarely. So a candy topping is great. I have some mini colored marshmallows, some mini white ones because I could only get this many colored ones. I've got some Reese's Pieces. I've got some mini vegan chocolate chips. I've got some licorice bites. So if you have like some leftover candy in your house from Halloween, you can make this at Thanksgiving with some leftover candy too. I have some regular M&Ms, and I have some fruit slices, the candied fruit slices, and you can get these sugar-free, because if you're trying to do sugar-free, what you can do, again, is use a sugar substitute like Splenda or monk fruit in your cookie dough and your cinnamon sugar topping. You can get the sugar-free fruit slices, you can get sugar-free candy, and I would suggest for your whip that you either make your own whipped cream for the top, or it's where you can control the amount of sugar or use the sugar substitute, or one of my favorites is the sugar-free Cool Whip. Tastes great, would work amazing in this particular recipe if you need it to be sugar-free for somebody who is either on a sugar-free diet or who's diabetic or just for whatever, can't have processed sugars. All right, so this is where it becomes a great thing to do with kids. If you have an older kid or a younger kid that likes to bake, because my younger grandson, who is under 5, loves to bake and has the patience to do it. Most kids don't. All right, hold that thought. We're going to check this cookie and see where we are. It needs, because it's big, it needs definitely a couple more minutes, over 10 minutes. And how I could tell is it hasn't fully browned yet, and it's still a little soft, but it's almost there because it kept its shape when I kind of nudged it with my finger. Now, so if you have a older kid or a younger one who loves to bake, you can do this from start to finish. You can make the cookie with them, you can make the frosting with them. Way to go. If you are having a group of little ones over, like say at the holidays, all your nieces, nephews, grandkids, whatever, you can make all the pizzas and frost them, or you can make the frosting ahead and put them into individual cups so the kids could use food coloring and color their frosting, and then they can have it whatever color they want. You can also take your different toppings and make little topping cups and give each kid the array of toppings to pick from and have them decorate their own pizza for their own dessert. And if you don't want to do a bigger one, what you can do is make just a big cookie for them to do. Or you can make the bigger one for them to have to take home later. Also, if you really want to go and make it look like pizza, it's really not that hard. Instead of leaving your edges flat, you can push them up a little so you get a little look of crust. You can then take your frosting and leaving it white as the cheese. You can make a raspberry, strawberry sauce, whatever color you want. And you can put that over the top right before serving as the sauce. You can take some sweetened coconut flakes and use food coloring and make them green for if you wanted little pepper shreds on there. You can then take things like a little white chocolate, make it into discs and dye them red to make them look like tomatoes, or you can get gummy candies that look like the things you want to put on your pizza, and you can make it look pretty realistic and completely fun and edible. If you wanted to do it for show, you could make all the toppings look very real out of fondant, but nobody wants to eat the fondant, so it's, like I said, that's just for show. If you want to be able to eat it, I suggest gummy candies of the type of things you want, or to get creative with some chocolates, or, you know, even just tossed on there. The licorice bits can look like bits of tomato, bits of sausage, so the kids can really have a lot of fun with this. So we're going to wait, and I'm going to show you what the cookie looks like when it comes out, and then we're going to let it cool, and then get the others baking as well. So it's just about ready, I think, to come out, but I'm gonna take a look and make sure. All right, let's see. So I am at about 13 minutes for the big one, and I like it a little more done than that for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it another 2, and then we'll take it out and we'll get a good look at it. We're gonna do this the way we do with other things. 5 minutes on the pan, then we'll get it off onto our cooling rack and let it cool. I'm actually going to use my trusty cutting boards, and I'm going to dump it. I'm going to lift it onto the smaller one with the parchment paper. Then I'm going to peel the parchment paper off. I'm going to turn it over onto the big cutting board, peel the parchment off, and then I will flip it onto here, never actually lifting the cookie so that I don't break it. And I'll show you how to do that once it's cool enough to do it with. And then our next step will be to wash some dishes so that we can go ahead and make our frosting while the cookies are baking. Because the type of racks I have, you have that airflow, it'll cool fairly quickly for us. So let's see, we're just about done with our extra minutes, and I'm gonna check it because it smells like cookie. All right, let's shut this off so it doesn't holler at us. Let's get the other one in, and then I will show that to you. Now watch for I'm gonna set this at 10, because especially that I have a smaller cookie on there, I wanna make sure that cookie is all right. So when that hits 5 minutes, I'll take this off. But I would like to show you this cookie first. And so if you can look and see how on the edges it's browned, then you can see that it's ready to come out. And I can touch it and it still holds its form, but it's still soft. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it down and let it cool on here for 5 minutes. And I will be back with you after 5 minutes. I'm gonna work on some dishes while that cools. Okay, we're back. We're gonna go ahead and get this cookie. Voila. Still a little hot, but I'm just going to move it onto here. And then, so we don't have to lift the cookie and risk breaking it, I'm going to flip it in between the 2 cutting boards that are big enough. Lift this one out of the way. Peel back our parchment paper. Throw it away. And then we're going to take our rack, put it on top, flip it again, remove that. Now we have this cooling nicely on our rack, our open rack, and we did not have to lift it before it's fully cool and risk breaking it. Okay? So I'm actually going to move these out of the way just so we don't knock them over. And we're going to start getting ready to make our frosting while the rest of the cookies are baking, the pizza cookies. We need our trusty bowl, our hand mixer, and our recipe. So let's take a look at our recipe. And we need 8 ounces of cream cheese, 8 tablespoons of butter, which in traditional butter is going to be 1 whole stick. And in a regular package of cream cheese, that's going to be 1 package of cream cheese. I like to do the 1/3 less fat cream cheese for this. Tastes exactly the same as the other cream cheese, as the regular cream cheese, but it's not as heavy on the calories. I wouldn't suggest the no fat because it kind of tastes like cardboard. But it is an option if, you know, you want to do that. And then we will need 1 cup of sifted powdered sugar. So let me grab the powdered sugar. I kept saying I thought I forgot something, and I did. It just wasn't in the cookies that I forgot something. All right. Powdered sugar. Knew I forgot something. Which again is, as I've said before, is while you read out your recipe, while you pull your ingredients out. That way, if you forget something, like I tend to do, you can quite frankly just see that something is missing. And eventually you'll figure out what it is and be able to bring it out. So we get our sifter, which is nice and clean, and make sure it is fully dry so it does none of your sugar sticks to it. Our measure cup, we need 1 cup powdered sugar. So, if you want, because we have made, I'm going to use my back of my knife for this. Because we have made Snickerdoodles, you could add some cinnamon sugar to the frosting if you want to. It does make a lovely frosting. I am actually going to add a little bit of my cinnamon sugar maybe to the top if I want extra cinnamon rather than into the frosting. But you could add just some actual cinnamon right into your frosting. But because we're putting toppings on there, I think it's less important to get the cinnamon flavor into the frosting. If I was doing a Snickerdoodle cake, which I made the other day, I put the cinnamon in the frosting as well, so it was Snickerdoodle flavored cake and Snickerdoodle flavored frosting. And then it can take a minute to sift powdered sugar. It just is the way it is. Now it calls for a cup, and I'm starting with a cup. If I feel like my frosting, all right, we're gonna stop and check our cookie. If I feel like my frosting isn't, I'm seeing at least 13 minutes for ones that are the 9-inch size per my stove, but you always want to start with the less anyway because everybody's stove can be different depending on your humidity, your heat. Sometimes my stove takes longer also, so. But as I was saying, if I don't feel like my frosting's thick enough, I can add more powdered sugar. If it doesn't quite taste the way I want it to, I can add a little more powdered sugar. So here's our pot. We're going to sift our powdered sugar in. Okay. I'm going to work through those extra lumpy bits. Not anything hard, just where it was clumpy. And then we're going to put that up. And then I'm going to get my second bowl, making sure that it is fully dry, so that no sugar sticks to it. And I'm going to pour my powdered sugar out. I need to get a new spatula. Into a smaller bowl. I like to, you could have sifted it into the separate bowl to start. I like to sift it into the taller bowl simply because I make less mess that way. But the choice is yours. All right, and we're going to set that aside, and we're going to start. You always want to mix your cream cheese. Ugh, now I have to wash my hands again. Sorry, y'all. I rubbed it at my face, and I don't want to touch any food after touching my face. Some days I'm a toucher, other days I'm not. So you're going to see that it says to mix your cream cheese first. Even though you normally bring this up to full room temperature, you do want to mix that cream cheese and get it nice and smooth before you start to add the butter. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the butter, and I'm just going to chunk up my cream cheese a little bit before I start the hand mixer. It's not necessary. It's less necessary with a stand mixer. I just find it's a little bit easier for the mixer to get going with it if you do it. Now you'll notice I am touching this even though we're not cooking it because these are staying at my house. So if I was making these for somebody's kids or for a kid party, at this point, you're gonna need a glove on to touch it. And that includes the candies because they are not going to be cooked. All right, now we're not going to start this second because I'm fixing to check this cookie. Looks like I'm getting a full 15 minutes on these. But again, I like to do it that way and break it up simply because we don't want the cookie to overcook. So I'm gonna go ahead and start just mixing this. It's called creaming, but really all you're doing is stirring it around in this. It's a fancy word for mix it up with your mixer. And I'll show you what you're looking for. Let's show you what we got here. Besides cream cheese all over everything, because I just touched the cream cheese beaters to the lid to the candy into the other bowl. Okay. So what you want when we say mix your cream cheese first is see how smooth that cream cheese is? You can spread it already by itself and nice and smooth. That's where you want to be before we put the butter and other items into it. So next on our list of here is add the butter, and we will add that gradually. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting, but we're going to do that after we take this cookie out and put the other one in. Again, because we don't want to be in the middle of something that we're doing while we're switching out here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. And then we're going to go ahead and put the other cookie in. Set our initial 10 minutes. And now we're going to start with our butter. So the first thing we're going to do is chunk it up. In this case, you absolutely want to cut it into tablespoons because we're going to add that gradually. So we're going to go ahead and take our butter, and we're going to go ahead and cut it into our tablespoons. And then we're going to take 2 tablespoons at a time and get it going in there. And we're going to get that fairly well incorporated before we add the next one in. And then we'll just add, and this is why I said you'll need gloves if you're going to make this for other people, because you're picking up the butter as you go. Show you again what we have since I wipe off my buttery hands. Otherwise, I will just drop what I'm holding. So you've mixed them in about 2 tablespoons at a time, cut into 1 tablespoon chunks, so that you can see what you end up with is it is quickly able to mix that in, and you can't see where the butter starts and the cream cheese ends. See? It's all homogeneous. So we're going to start next. We're going to want to add the sugar And we don't want to add it all at once again because then you'll end up wearing half of it. So I'm going to add about half and just get that partially mixed in. And then before I do anything, I'm going to take that paper towel and wipe this because I managed to get that buttery too. Not really sure how. And we're going to dump the rest of our flour in, or sorry, not flour, powdered sugar. And then we're going to scrape around the edges. And as you can see, I tend to end up flinging some of this when I do that. It is just me. Powdered sugar to mine because I can see that I want a little bit thicker consistency because we're doing it on a pizza. Sorry, I don't know if you could see that. I want a slightly thicker consistency, but before I do that, I'm going to add my vanilla. And it says a teaspoon, but you know I'm going to add more than that because I prefer a little more vanilla in my things. About a half a tablespoon for me, which is 1.5 teaspoons actually. And then I'm going to add 1, 2, and that's about 1/8 of a cup. 2 tablespoons is 1/8 of a cup. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons and see if I want to go fully to a 1/4 cup after I mix. I'm going to add that 1 more tablespoon. Now you noticed while I was mixing that I was scraping along the bottom. So while I was mixing the last of it, I was doing this so that I could see the bottom of the bowl. That's how you know you don't have any clumps of sugar hanging around the bowl. Now, if you are going to color this anything other than the white that it is, then I would say to you now, you put your color in and you let it spin. So let's get the powdered sugar out of the way. Let's get the mixer out of the way. Let's get that out of the way. Let's do a quick wipe down of our table. So we'll start by brushing the dry ingredients. Okay, and then we will do a quick wipe down. Again, remember your vinegar and water is fully food safe. If you are using anything else, make sure you don't have any food sitting nearby. All right, let's flip this second cookie up to get it cooling. And we'll be able to do this one in just a second because they cool so very quickly once you have them off there. All right, we're gonna do the same maneuver we did last time. We're gonna take our cookies, we'll lift them, and I'm gonna actually take the small cookies and go ahead and just set them aside for now because they'll just be in the way. I'm gonna move this pan, which is still hot, And we're going to do it exactly the same way. We're going to have the cookie on its parchment paper on the first cutting board. We're going to take the second one, put it on top, and flip. Holding tight so you don't fling your cookie across the room. Peel our parchment off. And we take our rack and we do another flip. Set this aside to cool. I'm going to pick up the little dudes and put them on there. And then I'm going to get us a lovely plate. A nice dinner plate will actually fit this size perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and just slip my cookie right off of there. You can see it's perfectly dinner plate size, based at that size, which is also a reason I particularly like this. So I'm going to take some of my frosting with my spatula and just put it in the center. Then I'm going to locate my offset spatula. An offset spatula just means it has the bend in it. If you don't have one of these, you could spread it with that kind of spatula or a flat one like this, or even a butter knife. Hold your cookie still and spread as much or as little frosting as you want per pizza. So I need a little more, I think. And when the pizza sets up, the frosting will harden up a little and hold those candies on. So just make you a nice little, what actually kind of looks like a ricotta cheese pizza. All right, so let's move that out of the way. Once we get it frosted how we wanted it, now I don't frost it to most of the corners because we don't usually have cheese or sauce all the way to the corners on our pizza. But I do want it a little further. So I'm going to fix it as I go and just make sure I really have my space covered. All right. Let me check our cookies. Okay, that one's a little thicker anyway because it was the leftover dough, so we definitely know we're going to need more time. On this first one, I'm going to start with some mini marshmallows, and this is really where kids would have a blast with this. And you can decorate this literally however makes you happy. You can throw your toppings on. You can place them and make it look pretty. You can make pictures with them. You can do them however makes you happy. Use your creativity. Like I said, it's great for kids. They love the idea of this. And then I'm going to take, I think next, some licorice pieces and put them in between each one of my marshmallows. And the great thing is these days we have, I know the dollar store carries them, so you can get them fairly inexpensive as well, is mini Reese's peanut butter cups, mini Kit Kats, so that you could have real small candies on here as well. So I am laying out my licorices. Like I said, this is a great post-Halloween as well because you can use leftover Halloween candy. And now I'm going to take some M&Ms and add them in a circle. And you can see where kids would love this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be any specific way. It just has to be what you want it to be. I particularly like them to be colorful. And then you eat a much smaller piece of this than you would, say, a regular sized cookie because it is full of candy. And then I'm going to take some fruit slices and make another circle. And then I'm going to take some Reese's peanut butter topping, and I'm going to make another inner circle. With them. Of course, my idea of a circle is interesting. All right, and then we're going to take our little mini chocolate chips, and we're going to go ahead and add a few in the center. And voila, a beautiful dessert pizza. All right, I'm going to put this one in my fridge to set, and so that it sets that frosting. And we're about to pull out the next one in about another minute. So I'm going to get another plate so that we can do another pizza. And we'll get this set up while that finishes. And then we need a tiny little plate for the cookies. Now, you could take these, frost them, let them set, and freeze them, wrapped really well in freezer paper and tin foil or in a big, like a cake container. I personally don't mind my candy frozen, so I would freeze it with the candy, but you could freeze it without, and then you can always let it thaw and put the candy on. You can bake the cookies ahead and put them in the freezer, and then let me wash my hands since I let the dog in, and then you can have the cookie thaw out, and you can just make the frosting and the toppings on the day you need them, so that you always have, say, the ability to do a rainy day project with your kids if they're stuck in the house with you. All right, so let's pull our last one out. Turn the oven off. And then set our timer for 5 minutes to flip it. And now we will frost our next cookie. All right, so you get more of your frosting on there. Same thing as before, just sort of hold your cookie still. You could do this on the plate. You could do this on a cutting board as well, or even a cake stand to make it a little easier. I'm getting frosting everywhere as usual. That's all right, it's pretty easy to clean this stuff up. And unlike a cake, you don't get crumbs in that frosting, so it's not really an issue to go back into your frosting. If you were frosting your cake, you wouldn't want to put this into your cake because you'd have crumbs on it. All right, so we will take our little trusty paper towel, wipe off the little bit of frosting I got on the plate, set the rest of our frosting aside, and we're going to build another pizza. And this time you can shake it up and do it how you want. Like I said, this is where your creativity, your kids' creativity can come out. We're going to do a fruit border this time. And if you're doing this around Christmas or like with the kids visiting for Christmas, you can use mint candies. You could use that peppermint bark stuff. Even break that up into smaller pieces to put on here. I just really love the fruit slices. So it's one of the things I like to use a lot of. So now that I have those situated, I'm going to go through this time and add my licorice. You can see if you have OCD and you need it perfect, you make it perfect. If you're a more free flow kind of person, you can do that as well. You could make a whole face on here. There's just so much you could do with the things like this. I'm going to go for my mini marshmallows again. Trying to find my orange ones. Now we got our mini marshmallows in there. I think I'm going to go for the Reese's Pieces and go for all yellow ones. Alright, and then I'm going to go for some M&Ms, but I'm going to go with the blue ones. And there goes the dog out back barking at God knows what. All day, every day. Good thing I feed the neighbors some of these treats I make, so they don't mind that they bark like crazy people. And then just a couple little mini little of these mini couple of these little mini chocolate chips in the center. And here we have our second pizza. And see, they can all be slightly different. All right, y'all. And that is dessert pizza 101. Alrighty. Let's get these guys, this guy out and onto his rack, onto this rack, since we're ready. Forget that's going to be hot. All right, let's get it turned over onto the big one. One more time, we'll just lift it off. 5 minutes. I'll be back with you. I'm gonna do some dishes while this cookie cools, and then we will decorate that last cookie. Okay, for our final cookie, let us repeat, repeat, repeat. If you have leftover frosting, you can save it if you choose to. It freezes well, thaws well, tastes pretty good frozen if you ask me. And we're gonna do the same thing we did with the others. This is a bit of a thicker cookie, that last one. So I may just use a little more frosting. Clean up the side of this because, as usual, I fling frosting. All right, and now this one, we're gonna kind of go just sprinkly. So you could just do how your heart desires. I like a little chocolate chip. I love chocolate with my Snickerdoodles. So I'm going to go with that, with some M&Ms. And a little Reese's Pieces. Oops, I got them all in one spot right there. And that's all I'm going to do for this one. And then we have our more abstract pizza. More like a little kid would do it. But it works and it looks fun and it looks appetizing. And regardless of whether you put them one by one or you do a sprinkle, and kids will just love to do this. Quite frankly, I enjoy making the pizzas too because they're just so adorable. All right, y'all, that's it for dessert pizzas. Hope you have fun doing this. As always, if you make it, shoot some pictures to me on Instagram or Twitter or in the comments. If you have any questions, any suggestions, any recipes you want to see, please send me a message or leave it in the comments. As always, I want to thank Haley and Mark for giving me a place to put up my videos. You can find me at SamKist, SAMKIST, on both Twitter and Instagram. Or you'll find these, you can leave me messages in the comments on @forthefansmedia.com. Up next month, Biryanki, which are Russian gingerbread cookies. And they're a little bit different than American gingerbread. I personally like them a little better because they're a little more meant to be eaten than used to build things, which it seems like our gingerbread has become more for building gingerbread houses than for eating. So what they are is basically a spice cookie rather than just a ginger cookie with a little powdered sugar on them. They are super simple to make. They are a great, quick go-to for Christmas if you get a last-minute Christmas party, your kid needs a last Christmas bag of cookies to take to school, your work suddenly wants to do a little thing. It's a quick, easy to make go-to with generally stuff you'll have in your cabinet. I'm going to show you specific spices, and I will tell you when we do it next month how you can adjust the spices to your taste, as little as much of each as you want. So I will see you next month.